Welcome to the Ride With Us podcast, presented by the American Coaster Enthusiasts, the world's largest ride enthusiast organization dedicated to the appreciation, promotion, and preservation of roller coasters around the globe. So please keep your hands and feet inside the podcast at all times as we welcome in your host.
Hello, enthusiasts. It's your host, Jessica Gardner. The wait is over. The Legacy of Schwarzkopf, Ace's latest documentary, is available to watch for free on YouTube as of August 29th, 2025. If you were not able to go to one of the live screenings, you definitely need to check it out. But even if you have seen it, it may have changed since you last viewed it. How come? Well, why don't we ask the team? We've had the Ace documentary team on for a couple episodes. If you haven't listened to those yet, you can go back and listen. But we wanted to have them on again to celebrate the YouTube release, hear about how they finally put all their footage together and made it all happen, and how our podcast correspondent and editor, Bob Randolph, got involved in the documentary as well. We're so proud of you, Bob. So, who better to moderate? Take it away, Bob.
I'm Bob Randolph, one of your correspondents. I'm also the editor of the podcast, and today I have with me some gentlemen that you should probably know. I have Kris Rowberry, Scott Schaffer, and Nicholas Laschkewitsch. Nicholas, did I get that last name right?
That was fantastic.
All right, good, because pronunciation is one of the things I should probably know how to do, considering that I'm a part of all this as well. The gentlemen that I've just introduced you to are a part of the Ace documentary team. They have put together, if you have not seen it at one of the many events that it's been at yet, they've put together the Legacy of Schwarzkopf, and it's getting ready to come out in wide release to everybody. So you and your friends, everybody, they're going to be able to see it together, and it's something that I am very proud to have been invited to be a part of. But the guys I just introduced you to, they're really the ones who have done everything behind it. Again, Kris Rowberry, the executive producer, Nicholas Laschkewitsch, who is the director, Scott Schaffer did all of the photography that you see on this. And of course, we can't forget Robert Engel, who was a part of this. He has not joined us on this, but he is a part of that. R.D. Dewberry, who did a lot of the research for the script. And also, we want to mention John M. Pasternak, who did a fantastic score for this. Those names are all volunteers. That is one thing that I want everybody to get out of this right up front. Ace is an all-volunteer organization. All of these guys have spent their own time to do this. And the result is something that if you've not seen it yet, you absolutely have to see it when it comes out. Gentlemen, it's good to talk to you all again. It's been a while since we've seen each other, but it's good to talk to you.
It's just great to hear your voice. When you say Legacy of Schwarzkopf, it's like, oh yeah, that's the guy who did the voiceover for the film.
And again, I'm very honored that you guys invited me to be a part of that, to be the voice of it. Something that I'm very proud to have been a part of, and I hope that what we have done together continues on for many, many more documentaries. Although I know you guys are a little worn out, because really, how long did this whole thing take?
Well, Nicholas and I and Robert started discussing this pretty much in the height of the pandemic, right, Nicholas? Like, we were just bored out of our minds, and we knew at some point we wanted to do another film. We just didn't know which one we wanted to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Certainly after we completed Legacy of Arrow back in 2016, we had our short list of ideas, and Schwarzkopf was on that list. And towards the end of 2019, it started to look like, okay, maybe this will be a thing. And then when we were all, on lockdown, it really gave us more time to think about, okay, let's see if we can use our extra time here and make this happen. And so the post-production began, the research began. And then, as soon as parks were open and things were safe and we were able to get out there and travel, we were ready to go. And that was, it really helped us get a jump start on production. And so 5 years really to make this whole thing happen.
So 5 years for about 90 minutes worth of a documentary, that is. That's an awful lot of effort to put in this. You guys all have regular jobs. I mean, that's the key thing that a lot of people don't realize. And how in the world did you find time to do this? And Scott, I want to go to you for a minute, because it's got to take some time to set up all of those amazing shots that you got with the rig and everything. I mean, how did you find the time to do this?
Well, it's just, basically instead of, let's say, going on like a traditional vacation, I would just look at this as like the time off of work. This is how I'm going to spend it. You know what I mean? And then, anything else was basically kind of just done around it. So it was just more of like a mindset. I mean, it's really a passion project. So,
But still, with all of the footage that's in there, because again, you went overseas to get a lot of this footage, and I know a lot of it was taken here in the States. Six Flags Great America is prominently featured in this. That's a lot of time and effort. That's a lot of coordination to get everybody together, because I know you guys traveled as a group when you went overseas. It's one of those things where, walk me through this, just a quick timeline of, okay, we decide we're going to go to place X. How long did it take to set that up?
oh,
Well, yeah, it depends, really, right, Scott? Because when it comes to this film specifically, Arrow had the benefit of we had no international travel, really. So it was a lot easier. There was no language barriers. But when it came to going to Germany, that's a whole nother thing. So it started almost instantaneously with Nicholas, Robert, and I just kind of making our contacts where we could. Scott even having to work in some of his contacts as well to try to get just some people to respond to us, because you get this weird, crazy Americans are just asking, "Hey, can we come put a camera on your coaster?" Usually, just get disregarded and thrown into the trash bin. So we had to really. It took some places months. And in other places, we didn't get a final yes to use approval for items for years. I met with a person at IAPA who was we were trying to get some information from them, and they had photos. We knew they had photos, and they didn't want to share them with us. 2.5 years later, right before the premiere, we checked in with them, and then they sent us a whole WeTransfer of some incredible shots in the film.
And how much of that stuff made it into the film that you got at the last minute? As we know, when you put things together, time frames, everything else that come involved, you get a last minute, oh, I've got this for you, and this is really great stuff, but you've already got a lot of the work done. Now, how do you sit down and make the decision? Because you've already got that time frame, which I know that you did. And Nicholas, maybe you can speak to this. You said, here's when the premiere is going to be, and it's set. And now all of a sudden you've got all of this great other stuff to fit in. How do you decide as a director this? How do you decide what made it and what didn't?
Yeah, that was probably my biggest challenge on editing this documentary. We premiered the film at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas in early November. I had not started editing the film at all until September 1st. And there was a real steep, basically not a learning curve, but I hadn't edited something like this in such a long time that there was just like this hurdle I had to surmount to even just get started. And with so much content, I mean, we shot, well, not just what we shot, but everything that's, been compiled for the film, everything we shot and archive footage, there was over 40 hours of content to start with. And that had to be whittled down to the 90-minute cut, which was painful. But ever since we released it, we've had maybe about a dozen or so showings. And between every showing, I've been tweaking it. I've been the timing of the films remain the same, but maybe there's a shot that I didn't like that I wanted to swap out. Or there was an additional archive discovery that we made that I wanted to swap that out for. Just, I'm a perfectionist when it comes to this, and I want, us to show as many different Schwarzkopf rides as we can. And so it's mostly finished by now, but it's been really hard to pick and choose because we've got some amazing content.
So again, this thing is getting ready for release to the public, and it's been in multiple places. You are still tweaking this thing. At what point do you finally go, I'm done, because I need to sit down, I need to take a break, and I need to have a cold beverage?
Yeah, a cold, tasty beverage.
Yeah, I will say it was a real mental challenge to edit all that film in that time period, just to get through 90 minutes of editing of the film in 60 days. I was between jobs at the time, and so I was working 10 to 15 hours a day for 60 days straight, basically making sure this thing was going to be presentable and at Circuit of the Americas, and it was. But since things weren't quite totally finished by then, we're like 99% there. I've essentially stopped tweaking at this point. It's very exhausting creatively to be so deep into a project like this for so long. And so after I got through a lot of the stuff that I knew I wanted to fix, it's been nice to like kind of step away for a bit, because it was really exhausting.
And since you were there on a lot of the trips, obviously where the footage was taken, do you think you were too close to make the decisions that you needed to make?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I maybe on the editing front, it would have been nicer to have started a little bit earlier. As far as Legacy of Arrow went, that was finished 24 hours before we premiered it. And that was a little hair raising because the computer I had at the time didn't have a lot of RAM. And so the export time was only going to allow for a singular trial to get that done. And thankfully it didn't fail. So this time we finished it 8 days before the premiere, which was still, I think, too close. So now that I know it's about 2 months straight of editing for a 90-minute film, I would have started at least in August.
So obviously some lessons learned not only from the Legacy of Arrow, but from this as well. Will you take those lessons forward on the next project that's in the pipeline?
Absolutely. I mean, as we all have our big dream projects and lists for what's next, one of the projects we were working on concurrently with this one is Connected by Coasters, the story of the American coaster enthusiasts. And of course, this is about the story of us, the club, and its history, and why we're significant to the history of the industry, some of our preservation efforts folks may not know about, and really just like the fascinating story about how the club even originated. This film about Ace was funded and approved at the same time the Legacy of Schwarzkopf was, and many of the people that we interviewed for Legacy of Schwarzkopf were interviewed at the same time for this other project. And so those who have a sharp eye will notice, hey, wait a minute, I remember that interview set up in Legacy of Schwarzkopf. So that's in the works. That's a TBD on when that's going to be released, but there's a lot of history there, and we want to make sure we interview all the right people before that one sees the public eye.
And I know that you guys are big into preserving the history, which of course is a big part of what ACE is about, preserving history. And for those who don't know, Kris Rowberry is also on the board of the National Roller Coaster Museum. Kris, does this film, The Legacy of Schwarzkopf, preserve the history of him fully? Is there anything that was missed that you would have liked to have gone back and put in?
You'd be pretty hard pressed to find anything else that we missed. We pretty much hit Schwarzkopf from the day he was born until the present day, which is now 24 years after, unfortunately, he passed away. So yeah, we touched every base for sure. And we got many different attractions that some that we didn't realize were either on their way out or would quickly be on their way out after we shot them. We're really fortunate because Scott just happened to be in Europe and was able to shoot Jetline right before it had its major incident.
Yeah, I was 6 days before the accident. I was up there, and I documented that ride as much as I could. I spent a couple hours filming it off ride, got as many POVs as I could, and it actually ended up being one of my favorite Schwarzkopfs that I've ever ridden, and I rode it. I spent half the day riding it basically, and then yeah, it's 6 days later.
One of the great parts about doing projects like this and partnering with folks like the museum is that we're telling this story in a different way, in a way that people today will understand, but also future-proofed, so that people in the future will be able to watch this. There is nothing greater than to see people cite the Legacy of Arrow as something in their posts from today. So we look forward to seeing what the Schwarzkopf documentary does years down the line.
Obviously, with a lot of the history being in this film, as much as you captured, it sounds like everything that you wanted to capture, you did. Which, again, it's an incredible film. As I saw the script, because I do the narration, of course, if you haven't figured that out by now, if you haven't seen it, you will. There were parts of this that didn't make it. There were some things that got left on the cutting room floor. Is there anything that got left on the cutting room floor that you wish that would have made it in? And I leave that up to all three of you. Kris.
I mean, you're asking us to George Lucas episode 4, you gotta, I'd be hard pressed to think of anything else I'd want to include, only because there will be tons of people that will say, oh, you didn't put this ride in, or you didn't put this ride in. Well, yes, that's very true. But we also made the film 90 minutes. And that's just about the right amount of time, I think, for to hold someone's attention for a topic like that. We could make a 4 hour Laschkewitsch cut of this film, and it probably would have made his life a lot easier in terms of editing. But I don't think it would be as well received to a wider audience as a result.
So what I'm hearing, Nicholas, is that you have a lot more time in front of you for the director's cuts.
That's right. I think the paycheck is in the mail. I'll wait for that to get here. No, it's such a difficult thing because I was hypercritical about how much, let's call it, airtime each coaster got in the film, pun intended. And it really was something that I would mainly pick what the script timing was. So say a coaster's voiceover lines equated to about 45 seconds worth of voiceover. I would, line up the clips, everything that I thought made sense for that. And then if I thought that coaster or ride didn't get enough time, I would then draw it out to give a chance for the soundtrack to shine without voiceover, and you'd have extended footage. And every ride, I looked at that very critically to decide, okay, does this ride need 25 seconds? Does this ride need 3 minutes? You look at how long the Wizard has in the film compared to some of the European rides later on that have 30 seconds, like Lisebergbahnen. It was tough because some of those rides, we had a lot of really great footage, like all the POVs we have that Scott was able to capture for us, all the drone footage that Kris was able to capture. I used such a sliver of that footage. And, that's the fun thing about being able to release this to the public is, Ace's YouTube channel has the opportunity for us to release a lot of this content in full, like we did for Legacy of Aero. We released almost 36 videos after Legacy of Aero was released with full interviews, full on-ride POVs, some bonus segments. And so there's definitely a lot of room to do deeper dives into some of these rides after its release.
So then the director's cut, maybe not in a full version, but in bits and pieces is what we can expect after it's finally released out to the public at large. Excellent. Absolutely looking forward to that because a lot of people like those point of view videos. Scott, let me ask you, those kinds of videos that people love, those POVs, you produce a lot of those. You're part of Upstop Media, which some folks have obviously heard of, and you do a lot of point of views for parks. Was there anything that you took, any footage that you shot that you went, this made it. This is the footage that I've been waiting for forever. You gave it to Nicholas, and then you see the final cut and you go, it's not there. Was there any of that?
Oh, I don't really think so because I would say the two rides that I was most excited for, which was one Whizzer and two Olympia Looping, they both got pretty good coverage, thankfully. But I will tell you, like, there's the part of me, Nicholas talks about being a perfectionist. Like, there's the part of me that wants to go out and just reshoot as much as I can as the cameras have advanced since we started this documentary to the time they finished. And it's like I almost want to recapture some of these rides. I had the opportunity to shoot Munich Looping, which is Olympia Looping when it operates in London for the Winter Wonderland Festival, and we actually added that into the film later on after it had already been screened. So, adding that and then just like, if I just had the opportunity to go back with the cameras that I have now versus 3 years ago.
Now, that's not to say, though, that Scott's footage is terrible. It's the best POV footage in the industry, bar none. That's why Scott, actually, a little secret to everybody, was the guy who helped us, with the POVs for Legacy of Aero, sort of showing us the kind of rudimentary rig that he had come up with. So without Scott, we wouldn't have had Legacy of Aero's great POVs. So then when we had the opportunity to do Schwarzkopf, we said, well, why don't we just get the guy who knows what he's doing, who's got the gear and has the experience? And it came in handy, especially in Oktoberfest, didn't it? Because they didn't want to wait for us.
No, that's always the thing. I obviously everything has to be safe, but you also don't want to be wasting people's time. And at Oktoberfest, people's time is about 60 seconds. They cycle trains pretty quickly, and every chain that goes out, there's a dollar amount attached to that train, and they're not waiting for me to set up the camera. So I would sometimes just ride in the front row just to finish up the rig, and it was That was quite the experience. Definitely quite the experience.
If you get a chance, Bob, and anybody else listening, when you watch the film, try to spot Scott in like the drone footage or the footage of just the ride operating, because odds are I think he snuck in at least a few times. And I know the whole crew is in on at least one shot. Not going to tell you which one, but see if you can spot it. I'd love to see if they can, you can see it.
A little hide and go seek in the movie there. Well, okay, nothing wrong with that. See, it's good for me because I've already seen it a couple of times, and of course, I always, I'm like you guys. I listen to it and I could go, man, I could have done better there. I could have done this. Or I could have read this a different way. So I get what you're saying about want it to be just that, the perfectionist shot or the perfectionist part of the film. And even as I was listening to it at Coda when we were there for the world debut, there were things that I just went, my buddy was sitting right next to me, and he's done voiceover work before, and he just saw me put my head down, and he's like, you wish you could have read that better, don't you? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I get where you're going with all that. I know exactly how that goes. Now, Scott, one other thing. How long does it take to set up some of these rigs for this stuff? Because, we all see people who hold out their phones and go, oh, I'm going to take onboard video, the point of view, and then they're going to post it. You obviously have something that is way more advanced than that, way safer, and obviously shoots a lot better video. What is the process to set that up? Let's just say the Wizard. What is the process of setting the camera, that onboard camera rig up in general? Because I've seen pictures of old rigs, and you see, you're laughing. I see you. Nobody can see you laughing, but I can, Scott. Those old school rigs that looked like they were, plywood and 2x4s and maybe a couple of pieces of metal to strap across the camera somewhere. Obviously, things have changed as technology has gotten better. The rigs are smaller. They're more stable. What is the process of setting that up, just for somebody who's never seen it or done it before?
So really, especially around like Wizard, you always start trying to find a mounting point and a mounting device that you're going to use, So I typically use like suction cups or clamps. And like the suction cups, the suction cups are, when you say suction cup, it doesn't sound like, it's like, how's that safe? But these suction cups, I could put one on the wall and run a bar between it and do pull-ups on it, like they're incredible.
So like an industrial strength suction cup, if you will.
Oh yeah. With the whole pump system. Yeah, they're pretty cool. They actually use them in Hollywood to rig cars on, or rig like big cameras on the cars. So like it's a bit overkill what I do with it, but it's, I much prefer that. And so once you find the spot and you get the camera either, clamped on or suctioned on, then you have to get your shot perfect, So I'll level out the shot, make sure the shot is like as center as I can possibly get it. And that's the part that takes the longest amount of time, to be honest. It's clamping a camera takes, because I preset everything so it's ready to go. So I'm not wasting time on the setup end. And it's really like getting the shot the perfect is what takes the longest. And then once that's done, then you have to tether everything. So like typically zip ties, metal cables, things like that. So there's always like a secondary point of contact and a backup. So redundancy is key. So
again, safety. I think a lot of people forget about that because everybody wants to strap a GoPro to their chest and go, "Oh, I'm on, I could be taking on board ride video." It's not nearly the same as what you're doing. It's not even close.
Well, yeah, and then it's not only are you concerned about the safety of the actual rig itself, but you're concerned about the safety of you setting up that rig on that roller coaster, like the things you might have to be stepping on or stepping over, making sure the ride's locked out, things like that. There's a lot of safety that goes into it. I actually teach a course at Ames about this. But yeah, there's a lot of safety on both ends that goes into this. So,
well, I know it's a lot of work. The videography, the photography in the film, it's definitely first class and it's exceptionally well done. Again, you can definitely tell how much work went into this. Kris, we've talked a lot so far about what got left on the cutting room floor. We talked about all the footage and how it got edited down, but you're the executive producer of this. When you started off with all this, what direction did you give to Nick and Scott and say, this is how I want it to roll? Because you're really the history guy here.
One of the great things about assembling an amazing team like Nicholas, Scott, Robert, RD, yourself, and I, is it doesn't require a lot of direction. You just trust in the process and trust in the skill set. When Nicholas, Robert, and I did Legacy of Arrow, we learned a lot about what we liked, what we didn't like. And we actually had in one of I call them a pre-flight meeting, where we would just say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and then how can we make it better? And we basically assigned ourselves the roles and just went at it. We trusted in each other that we would get the footage that we knew we needed. And if someone felt like they didn't get it, they would step up and ask. And that's really a mark of a great team. I don't think at any time I ever told them, here's what I want. They just knew what to do because we're all enthusiasts at heart. We know what other enthusiasts would want, and we know what other general public folks would like to learn about. So just go at it and do what you know you do best. And they did. And you've seen the result. It's incredible.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I learned a ton. When you guys handed me the script that I first saw it, I was I got the first two parts, which was part 1 and I think part 5, the way that you guys had sent it to me. I read part 1 and then I read part 5 because that's all I had. Part 5, I was sitting on a plane reading this. I was coming back from Florida. I had just gotten off a cruise. My jaw is dropping on the floor as I'm reading this because some of the stuff I didn't know. I'm an enthusiast, but I'm obviously not as well versed in history as I thought I was. I know who Schwarzkopf is. I know some of his rides, but I didn't know his history. And a lot of that stuff, like I said, I saw it for the first time and I just went, wow. And doing the script when I was recording it, there were a couple times when I would read certain things. I just had to stop because I was smiling like, man, that is so incredibly cool. I just had no idea. And there's a ton of moments in this film like that. A lot of things where you go, I didn't know this, or I didn't know that. And I kind of liken what he brought to Coasters to a coaching tree. You've got the head coach, and then you see all the people underneath of him that have learned from that person. And I think you really get a sense of that because I don't want to spoil this for everybody, but there's a coaching tree that has come from Schwarzkopf. Would you gentlemen agree with me on that?
Absolutely. And I felt the same way working on this film, that I didn't know, none of us knew everything that this film teaches you. And so my jaw was also dropping at the amount of connections, and this tree that you refer to will really surprise a lot of people. And I've even heard some audible, oh my gosh, wow, reactions to some of these specific moments when they realize how interconnected this industry really is. I always talk about it as a family industry just because of the size of it and how everybody knows everybody, but it's also interconnected in its history. And this film is a really good illustration of that.
It's a worldwide industry that everybody knows your name and everybody talks. And yes, Nicholas brought up a great point. At the second premiere, the Orlando premiere at Fun Spot in Orlando, I was sitting behind Joe Draves, who works with Rocky Mountain Construction, works with Chance Rides. He's an amazing designer. And about every 5 minutes or so, he would just turn around and look at me and go, "What? No way!" That was such a joy to see a person who is so involved in the industry, and he was learning all of these things at the exact same time, and it was information overload in the best way possible.
Yeah, and I really pride ourselves on the level of detail that we get to. You know, we don't just go on the internet and we pull up photos and video and put it together in a couple hours and we call it a day. Anybody can do that, but we go to the source, we get the information right, we get the families that are involved in this to be on board, to understand what we want to do, to essentially bless it, and I think that's what sets our projects apart.
And let's talk about some of that research for a minute, because obviously with the amount of information that's in this documentary, a lot of research was done, and RD did a lot of that. Am I correct?
Absolutely. His nickname is Schwarzkopf High Priest. He's probably the guy you want to talk to about that type of thing.
It's obviously very well researched because, again, the level of detail in this, Just absolutely amazing. And again, my mind, I still think about it. My mind is blown to this day. I've seen it a couple of times now, and every time I still marvel at the exact same spots because I'm just like, holy cow. I can't believe that I didn't know that. So it's really well done. How much research time did he spend? I know you guys said it took about 5 years from conception to the point of where it was done, but how much of research was that? I mean, how many of those years were research where you were waiting to find things out before you could actually start putting things together?
I would say really it started 5 years ago, where we just started to create an outline for what we thought we knew and then go from there. And RD was brilliant, as so was Robert Engel, by the way, of just getting in there and finding all of these nuanced research items that, like Nicholas said, it's pretty easy for somebody just to throw up a quick, here's the photo of Schwarzkopf. Everybody knows the photo, which is the one with him on Himalaya Bond, and just like say, okay, Etta Schwarzkopf did this, he did this, that's it. That's great. But as we said when we did Legacy of Arrow, Ace needs to differentiate itself, and to do so, it needs to do a huge project, because only Ace could be capable of doing something like this with the amount of membership that we have and the resources we have to be able to do that. To the point that, yeah, anywhere we went, it left a positive impression about Ace on wherever we went. So that's another cool side effect of the film. But that's, to go back to your question, because, I used to be in radio and apparently I can ramble. It was 5 years of research. It wasn't all at once, but it was spread out over about 5 years worth just to get it to where it was. And you talked a little bit about getting blessings from the family. We did. We got the blessing of Wieland and Sylvia Schwarzkopf, and that's his son and daughter. And let me tell you, when we got that email, that was humbling. That the whole family now gets to understand that the grandpa and his history. And what an honor for Ace and for our team to be able to have that type of an effect on someone who had such a great effect on the entire world, a positive effect, no less.
All right, let's talk about this. His family, his kids, they were obviously a big part of Schwarzkopf and his legacy, and it's all a part of this documentary. Was it tough to get their sign off on this? Did they kind of at one point or any point go, I don't know if I want to sign off for this, or we don't want to do this? Or, was it, yes, absolutely, we want to do this. We think it's a great thing. How did that look? It
was the most randomest, but luckiest and most amazing thing of all time. So I was at IAPA with Ride Entertainment, of the company that I work with, and Wieland was there to announce the Wildcat 2.0 at the Premier Rides booth. Well, I had emailed him about a month prior to IAPA, hoping that he would be there, and didn't get a response.
What year was this?
This was 22? Yeah, 2022. So about a month goes by, don't really hear anything. Okay, well, we've got some time. Let's just keep soldiering on. I get there right here at the booth in the morning, and before the show opens, because he's an exhibitor too, who walks into the booth? It's Wieland Schwarzkopf, and he's just leaning against one of our tables, just texting something on his phone. And I said, there has never been a greater sign in my life than now. So I walked over, I introduced myself. Oh, yes, I received your email. Here is the email of Thomas Enders, who is doing a biography on me. And so Thomas was kind of our go-between, in addition to Gary Slade of Amusement Today, who had known Wieland for 30 plus years. And between Gary and that encounter at IAPA and Thomas, that's what made the connection, to the point that we got invited. I still can't believe this happened, guys. We got invited to breakfast at Wieland's house. How does this happen? That's what we had to keep asking ourselves on the trip, is how did this happen? And then we realized, oh yeah, it's a Lost Parks trip, which is a joke we've had since Nicholas and Robert and I did the Lost Park show. Stuff just seems to happen on these trips. Good things just seem to happen, whether it be Scott finding restaurants in any town around the world. I don't know how he does it, but he does. And they were all great. To just, everything just kind of worked out. I can't describe it. It's Lost Parks magic.
So everything just kind of came together is what you're saying in a very amazing fashion. It's almost like this was meant to be.
Yeah, I don't like to invoke the word fate every now and then, but yeah, there were some coincidences here that just you couldn't write a story about them and make it believable.
Was meant to be told. And that's what this documentary was all about. It was done in a fantastic way. Let's talk a few minutes about some of the music. The music is just amazing. John, I don't want to leave John out of this because the music is such a big part of this documentary. How did he get involved?
So, Chris, you or Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was many years ago. I believe around the time of Legacy of Arrow, John had sent me an email. So this would be going back to around sometime in 2016, saying that he had seen Legacy of Arrow and was really inspired by our work, and basically it was like, if you want a composer for a future project, let us know. And many years had passed. And then, Scott, I think this is where you can jump in and talk a little bit about your involvement with him in more recent times, because then that's when his name kind of came back to us.
Yeah, so I actually worked with him on another documentary. This is how we rolled, the story of Rocky Mountain construction, and like his work was just so incredible, and I was just like blown away by this, and I just kept thinking to myself, like, I need to get involved with this guy in more projects. And in the back of my mind, especially, I was so inspired by everybody's work on Legacy of Arrow, that in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do Legacy of Schwarzkopf. I was pretty vocal about it. It just, I couldn't think of a more perfect person to score this. I was like, we need to have original music for this. Anton needs a theme song, like there needs to be a theme throughout, and like the only way to do it is to get a composer, and the best composer that we can get is going to be him, and because he is an enthusiast and he already knows all this stuff. So like, yeah, it was just like, it was absolutely perfect, absolutely perfect.
Do you guys remember the first time that you heard the Anton theme? And just sort of your reaction to that when it happened? Because I distinctly remember it. I was driving in my car to bowling, of all things, and he had sent it in the messenger, and I listened to it, and I had to pull the car over because I just whoa, it was powerful. It made sense, and then to hear how that blended in seamlessly with Nicholas's cutting up of the film, and then Bob with your voice, it's ridiculous. Most people don't even realize that the score is original. That's how good it was. Like, you don't even realize just how good it is until you start really listening to the nuances of it, that when you go see the Zambezi Zinger segment, it's kind of got a different sort of feel to it. And same with Montezuma's Revenge. It's crazy how he was able to do that. Oh my gosh. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it right now.
Yeah, like I remember when we first showed the trailer to the family. And I mean, the music just hit so hard, and Sylvia started to cry, and then I started to cry, then we all started to cry. Oh, yeah. I mean, the music really, it really makes the film.
It's, again, the music, as you said, it's very powerful. And I was amazed that the whole thing was original. It's so well done. Everything just fits perfectly. And Kris, you and I have both spent some time in the radio industry, and we both know that there's production music that's out there that's stock. A lot of films use that kind of stuff. They, try to make the music fit what they're doing. That is not the case here. This music actually fits because it was written for this purpose. It wasn't stock music coming from somewhere. It was custom written. It was custom composed. And man, it really helps tell the story because you can feel the energy at various points in this documentary. You can really feel when things change, when the scene changes, the music changes. It just hits. It's one of those moments, and most people who have not done any kind of lengthy production, and Nicholas, I know that you can speak to this, when you hit that moment and everything just happens right. When you put it together, you play it back and you go, yeah, that's
Absolutely. And it was very challenging from an editing perspective because every project I had done before in the film space had been done to production music that I had selected prior to editing the image. And so if you look at Legacy of Arrow, if you look at Lost Parks, a lot of that stuff, timing wise, was based purely upon finding a track that I liked that had the right feel, and then I just edited it exactly to it. This time around, I had to edit the image to the script and the voiceover timing, and then adding in the dead space for rides that needed additional timing without music. And that was very challenging. That's how real films are done. And so then we had to go around and have scoring sessions with John, and we would discuss the themes that each person in the film would get, that each ride in the film would get if they were a substantial enough ride. And then, if you watch the film and pay very close attention to the soundtrack, you'll find that John is a very smart composer, and the music is very smart. And the way that themes are reutilized with different motifs throughout the different themes that are carried in the film, it really adds another layer of flair that elevates the film to a whole new level. And I think Scott, Kris, and Rob, we would all agree, and Bob, you as well, that the film is really brought to life by the mood and the feelings that John was able to compose for us.
It's one of those things where the whole documentary is together, just from start to finish. Really, you get the sense of history with the music and the shots and everything else. You get the sense of who he was and what he did for us enthusiasts. And we should be grateful that Anton Schwarzkopf ever graced this rock that we call the planet Earth. We should be very grateful that he is here, because without him, there are so many things that we may not have today. And that's what this film really goes into. So one last question for the three of you. What part really stands out for you, if you can name one part?
For me, it would be the whole story of Whizzer at Great America, because that was kind of my introduction into Schwarzkopf as a kid and as a young enthusiast. And the story of that ride being saved and actually being a part of that story, like, I mean, I was ready to riot. I mean, we all were. We're like, there's just no way you're getting rid of Whizzer. Like, there's no way. I feel like that part just really hit home to me. And also, Marcus Lashak is a good friend of mine as well. And just hearing his story, and a lot of the people that were with us at Great America I've known for 25, 30 years almost, that part kind of took it home for me.
Yeah, for me, I've always been a big fan of, Gary Slade. He's such a legend in this industry. He's such a savior of amusement history with his work with the NRCMA, his work with Amusement Today and the Golden Ticket Awards. And so having his help and connections have been really great. But his stories in the film, specifically about Shockwave and the kids getting sick because they had the pink thing ice cream treat and it was a hot day, and Anton Schwarzkopf was upset that they were getting nauseous. That's just a little tease as to that story. But anytime he comes on,
and a fantastic story it is. It really is a good story.
Yeah, it's anytime it comes up, it still brings a smile to my face, and I have to laugh at the end because the way he animates the story, it feels like you're there with Gary and Anton Schwarzkopf, and Kris is doing a great job animating right now. If you all could see, that looks like Gary. Kris, good job! Wow, it's you'll have to see it to believe it, and every time, like I said, I just get a kick out of it.
For me, it's the impact that the film has already had on the industry as a whole. The fact that we were able to have CoasterCon this year at Six Flags Great America is a direct result of the film shooting there a few years ago. The impact it's had on the Schwarzkopf family, getting that blessing from them, the amount of pride that went into the film, to the point that I know every single ACE member is going to be proud that their organization came together and did something this epic. To me, that's what I'm most proud of. And I'm also proud of this entire team. between John Pasternak, R.D. Dewberry, Robert Engel, Nicholas Laschkewitsch, Scott Schaffer. At times, it's always like herding cats when you got a group of people. That's just the way it is, right? But, oh my goodness, we came together and we did something that's going to stand the test of time and that we can be proud of for the rest of our lives. That is incredible. And I could not be happier to have worked with these gentlemen on this project.
I totally agree with you, Kris. As I've said it before, and I will say it again, my part in this is, as far as I'm concerned, a small part. You've told me otherwise, and other people have told me otherwise. I will always say that my part is a small part. You guys did a lot of the hard work. You wrote the script. I just came in and lent my voice to this. But I am exceptionally proud to be a part of this. I can't tell you how honored I was when I was asked to be a part of this. It was a big thumbs up for me. And to read the script and learn everything that I learned, I hope that everybody else who watches this gets out of it what I got out of it. So one more as we wrap this up. Kris Rowberry, Scott Schaffer, Nicholas Laschkewitsch, you guys were gracious enough to join me on this. I appreciate it. Thank you ever so much for your time. And of course, we mentioned R.D. Dewberry. We do not want to forget him, Robert Engel, or John Pasternak, all a big part of this film. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the team who brought you The Legacy of Schwarzkopf. If you haven't seen it yet, when it's available for you to see, carve out some time. I promise you will learn something. Gentlemen, any last comments?
It's just kind of a pinch myself moment thinking back on the past 5 years and reflecting on it. We've had the opportunity to get together a few times and talk about the whole process, and it's nice to look back on it and think about our favorite moments and the memories we'll never forget. And it really, without Ace believing in our vision for this project and our previous projects, this wouldn't have happened without the countless members in the organization who donated footage, photos, archive material. Everybody who contributed something is thanked in the credits, whether or not that material made it into the film. So, it really was a family group effort, and it was, a true honor to be part of it.
Between everything I talked about, with Whizzer and just my passion for Anton Schwarzkopf, that really driven me to be an enthusiast and to continue my passion for roller coasters.
Gentlemen, once again, thank you for your time. The Legacy of Schwarzkopf, when you get the opportunity to see it, it is a must-see. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks again to Bob Randolph, Kris Rowberry, Scott Schaffer, and Nicholas Laschkewitsch for taking the time to record this podcast for us. And congratulations on an incredible film. Listeners, I can't wait for you to see it. You can find the link to watch it on Ace's website, ridewithace.com. You can search for Ace's YouTube page, and also we'll link to it in the show notes of this episode. While you're there, make sure you follow Ace's YouTube page and follow Ace everywhere. Ace is on Facebook, X, Threads, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Discord, Instagram, TikTok. Follow us everywhere to stay on top of all the coaster and park news and to hear what your Ace membership has to offer. If you haven't already, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the podcast. Give us 5 stars, rate and review. And if you have any questions or any podcast ideas you want to pitch, please reach out to podcast@aceonline.org. Thanks for listening. Hope you get to ride a coaster today.
Ride With Us is produced by the American Coaster Enthusiasts, a registered 501c3 organization. Visit ridewithace.com for additional information, and we will see you at the parks.